IG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Monday morning, the 16th of March 2026. We are halfway the mark, and I wish to say congratulations to all Muslims that are fasting, that have been fasting, that continue to fast, because I know we are edging closer and closer to the end of Ramadan. To our Christian counterparts, we also wish you the best of luck in your remaining days of Lent period in that regard or respect. So I hope you do, I hope God blesses you with all your wishes in all your endeavors. So we are back this morning to once again continue with the conversation of football. And this time around, I don't know, we're going to pick on a topic that I had hesitated to discuss because rarely do I want to discuss individuals, especially in the work or in the manner of giving opinion. When somebody gives their opinion, rarely do I want to discuss the individual as opposed to the realities of the matter, but I felt compelled to come out on this discussion regarding John Obi Mikel's comments about Arsenal just a couple of days back. And yeah, we'll get into it. But I hope you guys are doing all right. On the side of the aisle, it's a beautiful and bright sunny Monday morning. It could pass for a hot morning weather. And yeah, we are soldiering on. So I wish to say thank you to all our new subscribers that have recently joined the Football Tribe UG community. Thank you so much for helping us reach 4,000 subscribers. We hope you do not stop at only subscribing, but you go ahead and watch the content. There's lots of content on the channel, particularly because every single day we do 2 live broadcasts in the morning and in the evening, or / morning and night. Then also under the video section, we have content there. The one under the video section may not come as routine as we would love it to do, but in the last couple of days, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I've been doing my best to funnel out as much content as possible. In that, it may not come daily, but it will come whenever it is right, because it's not just a matter of doing the content or making the videos for you guys. I must make the video on a topic that I believe is worthy of a discussion and worthy of your time and ears to listen into. So that's why for me, making those videos is not a formality. It's something very intentional. And oftentimes I do skip topics that are being discussed by people, especially when I feel there's nothing new I can add to the discussion in terms of my personal opinion and things like that. So we'll leave that at that. So guys, those of you that are recently subscribe, please go on the channel under the video section, under the short section, and under the live section, and watch all that content. In fact, for those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, I say thank you so much. So if you're just joining us this morning, like Liam says hi Liam, where are you joining us from? Do let me know where you're joining us from. My name is Robert Kesakos, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 34 minutes past 9 a.m. So leave me a comment down in the comment section, and we'll be discussing. I'll read all your comments. If you need to send out special shout outs to anyone, please feel just do so in the comment section, and we'll get the conversation going. Football Tribe UG is a football channel, so welcome to the broadcast. Liam says, I liked and subscribe. Thank you so much, Liam. And the rest of you, I do implore you to do the same, to like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it's your first time here. Anyways, I wanted us to discuss the comments from a former Chelsea midfielder, Johnny Obi Mikel, when he came out to sort of water down Arsenal's performance this season by saying he would not recognize Arsenal as winners because he feels they've cheated their way into winning the Premier League. Now, for all intents and purposes, Arsenal have not yet won the Premier League. They're almost close to winning it, but they have not yet crossed that line. And until then, I, for one, will not speak about them as champions. A lot of people seem to think that they are champions in waiting, and that's by the virtue of the fact that they are at the summit of the Premier League table. And perhaps deservingly so. Now, I'm afraid I have to use the kind of language that I often would want to refrain from. John Obi Mikel is a kind of person that makes black people look stupid. There is a cliche of people defining certain races as dumb. And when people like John Obi Mikel make the kind of comments that he made, he sort of makes us look stupid. And yet, black people are not stupid. They are some of the wisest people or most knowledgeable people you'll find. Then the other thing is, a lot of times we've been lectured by people, perhaps rightly so. It's a matter of opinion, that for you to come out and discuss football and discuss the topic of football and analyze the game and try to dissect the game and try to help others understand the game in whichever way you see fit or in whichever way you yourself understand it, that you should only do it if you ever played professionally. There's that unpopular opinion. And particularly, I remember a Ugandan ex-footballer called Mike Mutiaba tried to make the same argument, and I did not agree with it. That a lot of people talking about football today do not deserve to be talking about. In any case, he almost argued the case that they have no right whatsoever. And he was talking about general media and punditry of how people go on TikTok and make their videos about football, blah, 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 and make their own analysis. First of all, they reserve their own right to give their own opinions about the game of football and the teams that they support. For me, that's the starting point. You do not have to agree with their opinion. You do not have to agree with their assessment of things, because we can watch the same game, you and I, and come out with different verdicts. The result will still be the same at the end of 90 minutes, but our view of how the game played out and perhaps what went right, what went wrong, what was a 50-50 can be different. It's often very evident when it comes to decisions. Some, you'll say it was a foul, I'll say it was a 50-50, I'll say it was a soft foul, I'll say it was subjective, whichever way we may describe it. It's just the nature of it. Now, a lot of times we've been told, what moral authority do you have commenting about the game? And majority of these guys that have played the game and sort of want to make it as though they reserve the right of having an opinion of the game with more authority than anybody else, something that is in itself subjective, because just because you have an opinion on something doesn't make you right. You may have played the game, and very well so, but every time you come out to speak about the game, your opinions make little sense. But we won't dwell on that. So Mikel Obi recently came out and went out on a rant. He was speaking with TalkSport. And then he said he was on TalkSport. Now, he's either stupid, and I would not want to believe that Mikel Obi is stupid. Two, he's just for clout for his podcast, or he's delusional. At least one of those things is correct. I would want to believe. First of all, Johnny Obi Mikel played under a manager who was known to be the king of dark arts in modern football. He played for a team like Chelsea. For some reason, nobody else left a comment on the stream. Sometimes people are like that. They like the broadcast, but they're hesitant to leave a comment, Liam. But it's all right. Thank you. So, but maybe they will come through as the discussion goes on. So, John Obi Mikel played football under Jose Mourinho. And what do we know about Jose Mourinho? Jose Mourinho, you remember his first stint with Chelsea. He was very comfortable, them scoring one goal, whether it was a penalty, whether it was a direct free kick, whether it was from a corner kick, whichever way the goal came, and they saw out the remainder of the game and won by a goal to nil or by 2 goals to nil. There were in terms of modern football, and when I say modern football, I refer to the period between 2000 and onwards. It doesn't mean that the game prior to that was not good, but that's what I refer to, or the period as to what to which I'm making reference to. He was the king of backing the bus. They played with low blocks and things like that. And they had very good players in that Chelsea squad. And every time the likes of Jose Mourinho wanted to see out the rest of the game, he's one of those players that they would put on. In his entire Chelsea career, I don't know how many seasons he spent with them, but a good chunk of them, he scored only 1 Premier League goal. Now, a lot of people will tell you, yeah, central midfielders do not score that many goals. Yeah, Martin Zubimendi has, I think, about 6 goals for the Arsenal this season. So do not tell me that nonsense. So in his entire Premier League career, he scored 1 goal, 1 Premier League goal for Chelsea. That's the guy that wants to lecture Arsenal about playing entertaining football. And he feels they're cheating their way into the game. Then, and this is what I said, he's either stupid or delusional or looking for clout. He goes on to say that they are only reliant on set pieces. By the way, I gotta go. I have school. Sorry. It's all right, Liam. Thank you so much for the little time that you managed to dedicate and be with us. It's much appreciated. Perhaps next time. We do have these broadcasts every single morning, Monday to Saturday. On Saturday, we come at around 10 a.m. And then every single night at 11 p.m. So you can join us whenever you do have some time on you. Wish you the best of your day. So now, Johnny Obi Mikel says, Arsenal, with all the quality they have in their squad, and he goes on to enlist some of those players, Ebeleche Eze, Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, etc., are reliant on set pieces. Now, first of all, the idea that Arsenal are reliant or overly reliant on set pieces can be demystified. We're talking about a team that is, until this point, has scored, I think, about 103 goals this season, more than any other team in the Premier League. And out of those goals, about only 28 or 29 are from set pieces. And let's do the simple math. So they've scored 103 minus, let's say 29. In other words, they've scored 74 goals from open play or non-set piece scores. Out of those 74, take off like maybe 4 or 5 that have been on goals from opponents. And you still have 69 or 70 goals that they've scored from open play. Now, make that make sense. If they've scored more than twice the number of goals from open play than they've scored from set pieces, and then that makes it a reliance on set pieces. Like I said, it's either Mikel Obi is stupid or delusional or is just in clout for his podcast. It's that simple. He goes on to say that they've cheated their way into winning the Premier League and he wouldn't recognize them as champions. Now, while Arsenal have been playing this ugly football, not being creative, having to rely on set pieces, and cheating their way into winning the Premier League title, what have all the other opponents been doing the entire season? You have Manchester City, you have Liverpool, you have Man United, you have Aston Villa, you have Chelsea. And any other team you can think of that you would qualify for title contenders coming into the new season. What have they been doing? It is true that Arsenal have scored the most number of goals from set-piece play. It's just part of their strength. Pedro is asking, who is Michael? You mean Michael Carrick? Yes. People think you mean a person with the surname Michael. Ah, I try to fit in there the Michael Carrick, but the description is limited to 100 characters. So I'd used up. Okay, maybe I should change the name Michael to Carrick, so that it's more direct for people, or more easy for people to understand that way, because maybe a Michael would pass for so many Michaels out there. Anyways, thank you so much for that observation, Pedri, and good morning to you too. I hope you're doing okay. So, back to the John Obi Mikel story. So, when he says, "How is your day been?" It's been all right. So now he goes on to regurgitate a lot of nonsense, by the way, about Arsenal cheating. Now, when he says about Arsenal cheating, what does he mean? Does he mean the bribe referees? Does he mean the bribe opponent players? Does it mean they foul people and they do not get booked for it or called for it? How is that their fault? If you commit a crime and the authorities are aware of it and they do not bring you to book, is it your fault? In any case, if the authorities watch on, in you committing what society dubs as a crime, and especially not because you are an oligarch in society or a king or a prince or something, then the crime in itself becomes subjective. I'll give you an example. Pedri says, "I hate Arsenal." I'm not sure you hate Arsenal that much, or even if you do. But the point I'm trying to make is that, for example, let's say, sorry about the hate. So, if let's say you're caught peeing on the side of the road, and I use that example because I remember watching a comedy clip and somebody was saying he doesn't know, but Indians are very prone to doing that, peeing on the side of the road. And one time he's driving with this guy he's a Russian guy is driving through the city, I think St. Petersburg or something, and then they see somebody urinating on the side of the walls of the road against the wall, and the Indian is like, "You see, you people also urinate on the side of the road." Then they sort of scream at the guy to turn and see who it is, and when the guy turns, he's Indian. So, anyways, if you deem that as a crime or a criminal offense, and then police do not bring that person to book, then society may think it's subjective. It's not that a crime. The point I'm trying to make with that analogy is that Mikel Obi is trying to tell the world that Arsenal are cheating themselves into winning a Premier League title. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you define that? If you're saying they're doing it week in, week out, how come they're not being called out for it by the officials? Are the officials that stupid, or they are bending the rules to benefit Arsenal? And then the other thing, okay, there's a comment from Muava. Muava, I hope that's how you, Muavadi says, "Not cheating Arsenal, just found a glitch in the rules on their corner kicks." Exactly. You remember when Chelsea, most recent or in recent times, have been signing players and putting them on very long-term contracts before UEFA came in to say, okay, this will be the nature of contracts and etc, etc, and how they were going about the PSR rules. It's about finding a loophole and navigate around that. You remember what they did with their PSR rules. They decided to sell their female team, that is the Chelsea female team, to their subsidiary of Bluco, and then the two-team hotels to raise 276 million pounds to record it as incomes coming into the club to stay on the right side of the profit and sustainability rules of the Premier League. And the Premier League took those finances into account as resources that have come into the club. But UEFA refused to acknowledge that as finances coming into the club, as money made by the club. So that's why among the teams that were penalized for flouting the financial fair play rules of UEFA, Chelsea is among them, among other teams. And yet, on the other side of the Premier League, the story is different, you know? Okay, but thank you so much, Mwavali Elwin, for that comment. Pedro says, they play absolutely incredible and simply disgusting football. They should learn from their master Barcelona that actually play football. One chance created, average per match. What a stupid small club. The worst winner by far, 31 games, 21 wins. Very bad winner. That's Pedro being sarcastic, by the way, in case you do not recognize. First of all, when people talk about boy, I think people are missing a point here. Arsenal have oftentimes been effective in the manner in which they play that it passes for boy. It is true that we have watched a number of Arsenal games that came out boy, and you did not feel entertained. But then also you remember, Arsenal do not owe anybody the obligation of playing entertaining football for as long as they are winning. That's just about it. Let me put this question to you. If you're a Barcelona fan, a Real Madrid fan, a Bayern Munich fan, a Chelsea fan, a Man United fan, would you rather play an entertaining final in which you lose by 3-1, as opposed to playing what passes for a boring game and win by 1-0? We know for a fact that in recent Champions League finals, we have to go back to 2020, 2021, 2023, all those UEFA Champions League finals were won by 1-0. That was by Bayern Munich in 2020. Then in 2021, Chelsea beating Manchester City, and 2023, Man City being Inter Milan. So I think to Arsenal, the ends will justify the means, you know? And if and by the way, and here's the other reality is that the most boring team has scored more goals than any other team in the Premier League across all competitions. That's boring. What are the ones entertaining doing? In terms of, you know, football goes through a series of changes, and that's why I can tell you for a fact that how Manchester City played football in 2017, 2018, and in between that period is not the same way they go about the game today. That's the change of football. Mikel Arteta has played that counter-attacking, scintillating football. You remember 2021, 2022 season, in which they eventually, I think, finished, was it 5th, and did not qualify for the UEFA Champions League? You remember that season? You remember the first season they challenged for the Premier League title, 2022-2023, and the season subsequent to that, 2023-2024. I think they played their most entertaining football in the post-Arsene Wenger era. How did the seasons conclude? They concluded with Arsenal being trophyless. So, internally, to themselves, they've assessed themselves, this is how we play, this is how it ends up. Where is the game going in terms of overall direction? And they've come to the conclusion that the game is changing. Or if it is not changing, we need to spearhead the change. And they've taken a certain direction. Whether you agree with that direction is all beside the point, because For as long as it is working for them, they're not going to change their formula. It's that simple for them. So for Mikel Obi and all those that share his views that Arsenal cheating is going to be a non-issue at the end of the day if Arsenal win silverware. There's no medal that comes out that says entertaining champion. It simply says champion or winner. It's that simple, you know. Let's look at goals from set pieces in the Premier League. And when it comes to set pieces, by the way, we mean free kicks, throw-ins, corner kicks, and penalties. So we'll get to that in a bit. And by the way, did you know you can only get a corner if you are attacking? You cannot get a corner while defending. Makes sense? In other words, if Arsenal are getting so many corner kicks, it's because they are attacking. And as those teams defend against them, they end up conceding corner kicks. But let's look at the numbers, what the numbers say in terms of goals scored from set pieces. Like I said, Arsenal lead the pile in as far as the Premier League is concerned. And goals from corner kicks, throw-ins, and free kicks have been 19, and only 3 from penalties, giving them a total of 22 goals from set-piece play. Next to them is Newcastle. They've scored 14 goals from corners, throw-ins, and free kicks. 5 of them have been penalties, giving them a tally of 19. Chelsea come joint second with 12 goals from throw-ins, corner kicks, and etc., with 7 penalties. Now, at least next to Chelsea's Leeds, you have Bournemouth, you have Manchester United. All these have scored at least 13 goals from throw-ins, corner kicks, and free kicks. And nobody's talking about them. Why? Because Newcastle are 3 goals, Newcastle and Chelsea are 3 goals behind Arsenal for goals scored from set pieces. You get my point? Over the weekend, when Arsenal beat up against Everton, some people may have felt bored. I'm not sure Arsenal fans felt bored more than they did feel under pressure. But let's look at this again. Pedri said there was a winner by far, 31 games, and said, I'm not being sarcastic. I literally fall asleep watching this small club. The only 3 times it was fun was both games versus Spurs and their win versus Atletico Madrid. Bro, what do you mean sometimes it was boring? When I say sometimes it was boring, I watched a goalless draw between Nottingham Forest and Arsenal. I watched a goalless draw between Arsenal and Liverpool. I watched a 1-0 victory between Arsenal and Brighton, and I did not think that was entertaining enough. I watched Arsenal beat Leeds 5-0. I watched Arsenal beat Leeds 4-1. I watched Arsenal beat Spurs. I watched Arsenal beat Nottingham Forest 3-0. I watched Arsenal play in a 1-1 draw against Chelsea. I did not think that was boring. I watched Arsenal share the spoils with Manchester City in a 1-1 draw, and I did not think Arsenal were boring. In any case, Manchester City played with a low block for the first time in as long as I can remember. I watched Arsenal lose to Manchester United 3-2. I did not think that was boring. I can go on and on for the Arsenal games that I've watched that were not boring. You went on by extension, Pedri, and cited a game in the UEFA Champions League against Atletico de Madrid. There's not a single game of football in the UEFA Champions League at the league phase of Arsenal that I watched and I felt they were boring. Not in their 3-0 victory against Club Brugge, and then Slavia Praha, not when they beat Inter Milan 3-1, not when they beat Bayern Munich 3-1. I do not think they were buoyant. So, unless, and by the way, guys, unless you disabuse yourself of the bias that you may have on a particular team, your opinion about them is always going to be soiled. It's always going to be soiled. You know, you go on and say that, bro. Okay, this is from Mavali says, but before Pep came to England, Arsenal was the only EPL team to win unbeaten, played most entertaining football in England. They had the most expensive tickets in the EPL. The club has lost that identity. That's his view. And again, this is what I said. Unless you're selective in how you view them. You remember Unai Emery in his first campaign, 2018-2019, I did not think Arsenal were buoyant. And even when they were losing in his second season, before he gets sacked in November 2019, they were not buoyant. Then in comes Mikel Arteta to, I think, December 20th, thereabout. He takes on the reins. Until last season, they played the kind of football that wasn't much different from Arsene Wenger's football. With change of managers, the principles or the culture of the team may not change, but certain things are bound to change. And that's what I see of this Arsenal side. But then also, let's not forget, or let's look back and ask ourselves, do you remember that Arsene Wenger won only 3 Premier League titles? Whether he was playing entertaining football or it wasn't entertaining to you or otherwise, that is all beside the point. It was, at the end of 22 years, 3 Premier League titles. So, if your objective is to win titles at the end of the season, and by definition, you're not going to be described as they won that title being entertaining, but rather just they won that title, then the part of entertainment in itself is subjective. One will say you do not need to be entertaining to win a title. Another will say you can do both, win a title and still be entertaining. So Manchester City are entertaining, Liverpool are entertaining. Where are they? Man City is second to us. Where's Liverpool? I think they are sixth on the Premier League clock, or thereabout, or fifth. Where's Chelsea? Let me ask, are Tottenham playing entertaining football? Because if the element for succeeding is playing entertaining football, then there are teams that deserve to be higher than Arsenal if they play more entertaining football. Look at Brighton. What are Brighton known for? They're one of the teams that play entertaining football. And where are they? So, and then the other thing I want you to put into consideration as you formulate your opinion, because at the end of the day, it is your opinion and it is valid as is, even though I may not agree with it. How do opponents behave when they play Arsenal? I remember when Manchester United beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 4 goals to 1 in their first leg. I think that was away to Modern. And then, not too long after that, Arsenal played the same Wolverhampton Wanderers side at the Emirates, and they struggled to score goals against the same team. Why? Because in simple terms, their approach about the game was different, because they knew they were facing a different opponent who they believed to be stronger. If you need another example, recently, Newcastle and Barcelona played to a 1-1 draw. If Barcelona were entertaining on the night, what was your view of the game? Your honest view of the game? They needed a set piece goal to share the spoils. So, in all their entertaining 89 minutes, they created only one shot, one chance that culminated with a shot on target. I think that was from Fermin Lopez in the first half? That's just one example. The other example that I can draw to was when Real Madrid lost to Osasuna by a goal to nil. Did they play boring football? So, you must, like I said, I do not think Arsenal owe it to anyone to play entertaining football or to play football that they feel that is desirable to them. Remember, it was this very season that Anna Slot came out to say teams are playing conservatively. He did not use the word conservatively exactly, but what he meant to say that teams are not creating loads of chances, they're not playing that expansive football. And our response was to him that those teams do not owe it to you to play the way you think you want them to play. Every team will play the way they want to play in a manner that they think can get them a result over an opponent. Because he was talking about their struggle to create chances because it was largely because of how opponents approached the game. So that's the nature of it. If Barcelona have a game to play against Real Madrid in the El Clasico, they do not owe it to Real Madrid to play in a way that helps Real Madrid create as many chances in the game, and vice versa. That Real Madrid do not owe it to Barcelona to play in such a manner that allows Barcelona to create lots of chances in the game. Today, no, I think over the weekend, Tim Sherwood was saying that if a game ends in a goalless draw, no team should be given a point. So, in other words, you can watch an entertaining goalless draw, but for as long as you do not put the ball in the back of the net, you shouldn't get anything. That's his view. Because I've seen entertaining goalless draws where teams were so close, but not close enough. I've also seen that. But anyway, let me go through some of your comments. Okay, Pedro says, bro, UEFA Champions League final is different. You say, bro, UEFA Champions League final is different to playing Wolves away. Bro, do not compare them. Sorry, but you cannot defend this. You yourself probably find it boring, but you do not want to say it. For real. Pedro, I've told you that I have watched a couple of games and I've listed them for you. The goalless draw against Nottingham Forest, goalless draw against Liverpool, the Brighton and Hove Albion game. I watched those games and they were boring to me. The other games, I do not share the similar view. And I've enlisted for you some of those other games that I've watched. You know, I've given you the other examples. So, did you not hear the other examples? So, like I said, it's subjective. You have an opinion about how they go about the game. I have an opinion about how they go about it. I do not find it boring for majority of it. You find it boring for majority of it. Like I said, if you disabuse yourself of the prejudice that you may have about them, perhaps you may have a different view. That's the thing. And by the way, that's the other part about Mikel Obi's argument, is that he goes on to complain about how much they've spent. And he spoke in such bad taste that even a neutral would question his line of opinion, you know, because he spoke with the bias that any non-Arsenal fan or rival would speak with. You get. So, if he can disabuse himself of the hate that he may have for Arsenal, perhaps, in some cases, he may draw to different conclusions. I've given you the evidence that in 103 goals that Arsenal have scored this season, only 29 have come from set pieces. So how did they score the others? That's a simple statistic. It's a fact. It's not hearsay. It's not conjecture. You know, okay. You say, okay, I understand you have to attack to get a corner, but it's the only time they stop defending. But it's the only time they stop defending and attack. They aim to get a corner and score from it, and somehow score 3 from set pieces. This is not okay. And by the way, guys, let's not forget one thing. Set pieces are part of the game. It's not like we woke up and this season they said we are introducing corner kicks. They did not come this season. Set pieces have always been part of the game. Chelsea have gotten 7 penalties. I cannot sit here and moan about Chelsea having 7 penalties. Why? Because it is part of the game. They only get penalties if there's a handball in the area or their own player was fouled while attacking, and then they get a penalty. That's why I've given you the statistics. I've given you the statistics that Newcastle have scored 14 goals from set pieces. Chelsea have scored 12 goals from set pieces, and that's only throw-ins, free kicks, and corner kicks. Not forget the penalty goals. Leeds United, Bournemouth, and Manchester United, and Crystal Palace have scored at least 13 goals. Crystal Palace have scored 10 from set pieces. And with set pieces, I mean to say, that's corner kicks, throw-ins, and direct free kicks. That's with the exclusion of penalties. So it is misleading for somebody to paint the picture that a team that has scored more than 100 goals has been reliant on set pieces when not even half of those goals has been from set piece play. So let me ask, for those of you that are familiar with mathematics, if you have two glasses and one is almost full of soda and one is almost empty with water, in other words, a quarter glass water, and then you have another glass that has 3/4 soda. Which one is closer to being full? The one that is quarter way or the one that is 3/4 way? Make it make sense. Because basically, that's the simple analogy I can use. That they have scored more goals from open play than from set pieces. But then you're making the analogy that they are over-reliant on set pieces. And yet, they've won majority of their games scoring goals from open play. Make it make sense. I want to hope that you and I have not been misled by the media. You know the thing about the media is that they set the narrative. And a lot of people, if they are not critical of certain narratives, they are bound to carry them as gospel truth. And that's why the views, and by the way, the beauty about that was his former captain in John Terry came out to disqualify everything he had to say. And that's why I said, if he had only disabused himself of the hate that he may have for Arsenal, perhaps his views could have been different. It is okay to criticize Arsenal and say, yeah, in this game, in that game, they did not paint themselves in good glory. They did not play a good game. I've told you, they won away to Brighton. They did not play a good game. It's just that simple. You know, it wasn't a good game. They won all draw against Brentford. They did not play a good game. You know, Brentford on the day were the better side. You know, so let's look at the other comments. Okay, this is John. Hi, John. Then Pedro came back to say, um, when you said their trophy will say winner, I agree, but everyone will remember this winner if they end up winning. If they end up winning, it is not fun and the worst winner so far in history. Liverpool last year showed it all. Liverpool showed it, as in showed what? I didn't get that part correctly, Pedri. When you say Liverpool showed that, then the other thing is you know when Poskos was the first person to come out and say this that about Arsenal being boring and whatnot. And of course, he came back to change his words when he said, they did not deserve to win the Premier League. And the question to him was, who then deserves? In 2008-2009 season, Manchester United scored 68 goals only. They won the Premier League title with 90 points. Liverpool came second with 86 points. They had scored 77 goals that season. Chelsea, I think, were third and had scored as many goals as Man United had scored, 68. And whether you remember them as entertaining or as boring is besides the point. The point is, one, they won. That's the point one. Point two, because when you do the math, by the way, let's do the math. Because usually entertaining teams are high-scoring teams. Entertaining teams are high-scoring teams. They scored 68 goals divided by 38. In other words, they had an average of 1.7 goals per game. That was their average, as if you remember them to be very entertaining. So that's 2008-2009. And the reason as to why I went back to that statistic was because Paul Scholes was coming out high and mighty because he was in that team. They that were very, very entertaining scored even fewer goals than Liverpool, Chelsea. Sorry, they scored the same number, of course, as a third place Chelsea and a fourth place Arsenal in that season. So, that's when it becomes subjective. And if you do not disabuse yourself of the hate that you may have about Man United, you could say they weren't ugly because they averaged 1.7 goals per game. Now, let's go to this season currently with Arsenal having scored, 61 goals in 31 games. 61 goals in 31 games. They average 1.9 goals per game. That's more than Man United did. That very, very entertaining Man United side that had Cristiano Ronaldo and the others. So, anyway, let me get through all the other comments because I do not want to leave any comment unattended to. At least I want to try as much as possible to read all of them and respond to as many as I can. So please indulge me if I take a bit of time reading your comments. Okay, he won 3 Premier League titles with limited funds. Now you see, this is Mwavali adding context to the conversation. So, as you make the argument of present-day Arsenal, I want you to add context to the conversation. In me stating out the facts about Arsene Wenger, I wasn't painting him in bad shade. No, that wasn't the point. Because I know the context in which he operated in. I know the struggles he had to deal with. I know what it meant to the team when they built a new stadium, moved to the Emirates Stadium, and they had to sell their best players season in, season out, just to stay afloat because they had debts to pay. I know the context. And I wasn't trying to paint Arsene Wenger in bad shade, by the way. That was the point. And in case you misconstrued me, I'm sorry for having painted it in a manner that led you to believe that way, You say he won 3 Premier League titles with limited funds, and the club had to build a stadium and losing out on mark geniuses like Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, with Cristiano Ronaldo, that had nothing to do with money. It was just Arsene Wenger sleepwalking. And by the way, there are deals that Arsenal lost because of money. Not because they did not have the money, but because Arsene Wenger was hesitant to spend that much. Because as an economist, he attached value to certain things. And if he did not attach a certain value, if he attached a particular value on a player, he was not willing to go above, he never signed that player. That's how they lost Manuel Mata to Chelsea. That's how they lost Eden Hazard. That's how he failed to sign Kylian Mbappe, because the agent fees, they asked for, I think, a certain amount for agent fees, and he lost out. And look at who Kylian Mbappe is. He can tell you a whole list of very, very good players that he lost out on. So, but I understand where you're coming from. And you talk about Harry Kane. Harry Kane left the academy, never wanted to buy him. The list goes on, so please do not undermine his. I was not trying to undermine them. That wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. Then, so should everyone start playing like Arsenal FC? It is every team's right to play the way they see fit. When Wolves play the way they see fit, nobody decides for them. When Leeds play how they want to play, nobody decides to play for them, to decides for them to play how they play. Let me ask, do you think somebody came in the Premier League and told Chelsea to play the way they played between 2004 and 2007? And, do you think somebody came in and told them to play that way? It was their decision. It was the manager's decision in Jose Mourinho to play how he played. It's that simple. When he went to Real Madrid, Jose Mourinho in 2010, and Barcelona were dominating under Pep Guardiola, he decided to play the way Real Madrid played at the time because that was his prerogative. You know for a fact that Real Madrid fired Fabio Capello because they did not like how he went about his game. That was them. We know that teams have fired managers for playing in a certain way that they may not like, regardless of the results, by the way. Did you know that part of the reason as to why Nottingham Forest sacked Nuno Espirito Santo was because they did not feel at ease in how he played? That away from the disagreements or the rift that there was between him and Edu Gaspar Dawood, and then eventually saying that there had grown a gap between him and Evangelos Marinakis, it was in part of how they played. And I remember I was on this very forum and I said, dear Nottingham Forest, and my message was to the fans because the fans had a similar belief that they had they were not in the right space to demand to play a certain way for as long as the way they were playing was being effective. That they needed to be in the space of finishing within the top 7 and above for at least 3 consecutive years for them to start demanding to play more entertaining football. Now, let me ask, between Ange Postecoglou and Thomas Frank at Tottenham Hotspur, who was playing more entertaining football? In my opinion, I'd want to believe Ange Postecoglou. In fact, in his entertaining football, he was criticized that it came at the expense of them defending well. That was a criticism levied on him. Now, both managers have eventually been sacked, and we wait to see what the direction of Tottenham is going to be. Under Mauricio Pochettino, they played very good football. Very good football. They finished second at one point in the season. They reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League. They were playing good football. But at the end of the day, how is Mauricio Pochettino going to be remembered? At Tottenham Hotspur, They themselves fired him 6 months after the UEFA Champions League final. Whether you believe that was the right decision or not, that's all besides the point. But the one fact that does not go away, that as entertaining as you may have believed them to be, he still did not win them anything. Look at Diego Simeone. For those of you, and the good thing, Pedri watches more La Liga, perhaps consumes more La Liga football than we do, albeit that could be subjective. He knows a thing or two about Diego Simeone, because the other day we were discussing him in the context of Atletico de Madrid. And the Diego Simeone of 2014 and the period thereafter, quickly after, he has 2 La Liga titles. How did he win them? Did he win them playing the Barcelona way? Did he win them playing the Real Madrid way? He played their way. He played his way. And that's Atletico de Madrid. And albeit it is the same manager, the Atletico de Madrid of 2014 is very different from how they play in 2025, 2026. You may not agree with it, but it is what it is. Somebody will tell you, yeah, Atletico Madrid today are more entertaining than they were in 2014. And then the question will be, so what have they won today? You know that thing they say of never change a winning formula? If it's working, do not change it, or if it's not broken, do not try to fix it. Now, of course, for the context for Atletico de Madrid was that phase of players, outgrew the project and they had to move on. However, when it came to the rebuilding of the squad, they chose to take a different direction with different player profiles and things like that. So it's a wider conversation. Okay. So I hope that answers what maker I think is what makes it work explained. Okay. I hope that answers you in regards to should everyone start playing like Arsenal? No. Do you think it was Stoke City under Tony Pulis that told Mikel Arteta to play the way he's playing football this season? No, because Tony Pulis is the one largely believed to. That's why oftentimes, sometimes you've had Arsenal being related to as Stoke City. So I don't think that's the case. Yes, but Brighton do not have the names and aren't competing for the title. Do not compare them. I can only compare the teams Arsenal are competing with. I cannot compare Arsenal to Barcelona if we are talking about Premier League football and Barcelona playing in the Spanish La Liga. I cannot draw those comparisons. And before drawing comparisons to the likes of Brighton, I mentioned Liverpool, I mentioned Man United, I mentioned Chelsea and Man City. So you skipped all of them and then went to the Brighton end of it. So out of the teams that I sampled out, you picked Brighton. But still, I can make the comparison because they are playing in the same league. And you and I know that it's a given fact that all teams do not have the same resources. Leicester City won it with lesser resources. I know it was a one-off or a once-in-a-while opportunity, but these things happen. You think the season when Tottenham finished second, others had very few or poor resources that they could not compete to come second? That it had to be Tottenham finishing second? I think that was 2017, by the way, when Chelsea were winning the Premier League title. It wasn't because Manchester City were not in existence. No, they were there. And they had the resources. So Liverpool were there. They had the resources. But as we know that in a very long season, which is a marathon, sometimes regardless of your resources, you finish below others. It's just what it is. Because I think, was it Roberto Di Zerbi who helped them finish, was it 5th or 6th? I need to draw back to some, let me see. Brighton. was it 2022, 2023 season? Thereabout. That season, they finished 6th. Yeah, about that period. Yeah, when they finished 6th with Roberto Di Zerbi. When you go back to that 2022-2023 season, when Brighton finished 6th, it's not to say that they had more resources than Aston Villa, than Tottenham Hotspur. No, they just competed better overall the course of the campaign. People forget that in the 2022-2023 season, Chelsea finished 12th on the Premier League log. Was it because that Brighton had better resources than Chelsea? No, that wasn't the case. It's a competition. So you compete, and some teams, even though you have better resources than them, they'll finish above you, you know? Okay. So, okay. Also, for us, it was our only real bad game versus Newcastle. For Arsenal, it is always this bad. Like this, bro. Again, if you disabuse yourself of the bias, you look at it differently. I've given you, maybe you need to go and watch them. Maybe you did not watch them. And I understand that. And if you did not watch them, then perhaps you should not give examples based on them. If you've not watched all the games, it is okay to acknowledge that you've not watched all games. The same way I cannot tell you that I've watched every Barcelona game this season, you know? So go back to the Champions League phase and tell me one game where you saw an Arsenal were not entertaining to you. It's that simple. Go and enlist those games. And then we'll have a recap about those very games that you will have selected. Because your suggestion is that this was one-off for Barcelona. And I'm not criticizing Barcelona, by the way, for playing the way they played. Newcastle were just better on the day. It's that simple. It's not because Barcelona were poor or that they wanted to play boring football. It's Newcastle's counter strategy was just good and effective. And that's why they came out as the better team at the end of the day. And the good thing is that you and I came here in the aftermath of that game and acknowledged that Newcastle were better. And you said you're waiting for them at the Camp Nou because you're hoping at the Camp Nou you have a better game and a better strategy than them. Hopefully, you know. It's just that about it. I did not bring out the example of the Newcastle game to say that Barcelona are playing boring football or that they are capable of boring football. I was bringing context to the conversation. That's context that I want you to have when you dissect some of these games. I have acknowledged on my part that I've watched Arsenal games that were boring, you know. And by the way, anyway, let me leave that. Let me not rattle. Let me not rattle. Feathers here. Okay. Quickly. You say exactly, bro. It's not okay. Okay, that was a response to his view. I've just given you the numbers of the respective teams when it comes to set pieces. Arsenal have only scored 3 more goals than the teams next to them when it comes to set pieces. But suddenly, those 3 more goals are what are defining Arsenal in comparison to those other teams. You know, I've given you Newcastle, Chelsea. Newcastle and Chelsea come second with 19 goals from set pieces. That's penalties combined with corner kicks, throw-ins, and direct free kicks. Then after that is Leeds with 17, Bournemouth with 16, Man United with 16, Crystal Palace with 15, Brentford with 14, Tottenham Hotspur with 13, and Liverpool. And by the way, funny enough, Brentford are 8th on that log. But do you know that Brentford have been described as a team that over relies on set pieces in terms of throw-ins, long throw-ins from Michael Kayode and corner kicks? But it's not the reality. It's a narrative. When you dissect their games deeper, you'll find that that's just a narrative that has been attached to them. And by the way, okay, let me not use that example. I know it will not sit with you well with you. You'll get emotional about it. Okay, let's move on to say we should all unsubscribe. This channel is very biased. Now you see, we're having a difference of opinion. That is what you're calling for bias. When we were starting the discussion, I told you one thing, that I do respect your opinions as is, because they are your opinions based on your view, but I do not agree with them. So in other words, what you're calling bias is me not agreeing with you. So if I agree with you, then I'm not biased. But if we had another team that does not agree with us, then suddenly what? We are the biased one or they are the biased ones? I've given you the list of games where I found Arsenal boring. I've given you the list of games where I found Arsenal very entertaining. We've looked at other examples, but you're still of the same view. If that is bias for you, I cannot dissect it for you any further beyond that. That when we disagree on an opinion, then that is what qualifies for bias. I've given you my evidence. Give me your evidence. Give me your evidence. I've told you that out of the more than 100 goals they've scored, only 28 or 29 have come from set piece play. That's for penalties, corner kicks, throw-ins, and free kicks combined. So how about the other goals? Should we not talk about them? Should we disqualify them that like they never existed? You know, like I said, if we disabuse ourselves of the biases that we may hold against certain teams, for example, if I sat here and I started, let's say, and wore the shirt or the helmet of a Liverpool fan, and I started going on about Man United, about their 13 years without winning a Premier League title, and etc., without giving people the context within which it has happened, then I would be biased. Because context is key. When I cited the example of Arsene Wenger, Mwavali came out to bring the context. And I told him why I had cited the example. Without context, if we go back to the years when Barcelona were playing in the UEFA Europa League, does that narrative define Barcelona? Because there was context to it, you know? So we cannot use it as a yardstick to say, oh, that's the worst Barcelona team we have ever seen. We must add context to the conversation. And we must be honest, you know? So, okay. Let's see. All right. That's your view, by the way, Pedri, and I respect it. If you feel that way, the club has lost that identity. The EPA board will fix the loopholes next season. When you say sometimes boring was the first leg against Manchester United, when Arsenal won 1-0, was it entertaining or not? It was entertaining to me. I thought Manchester United were the best team on the day, that they deserved to win that game. But they did not score. You only win a game when you score. Man United were the better team on the day. You know? So, guys, and let's not confuse these two things. When you play an opponent, and an opponent is better than you on a given day, it doesn't mean you're boring. It means the opponent was better. You know? So, on that day, opening day of the season, Man United were the better team. Unfortunately for them, they lost because they did not score. I thought I came out of that game thinking Man United deserved to win the game, but they did not win. That's just the nature of sport. That's the nature of football. That the team that scores at the end of the day is the one that wins, not the one that deserved to win. You get the point. So, again, There's an image of Mamadou Sarr, I think, holding on to David Raya during a corner kick. There's an image of, was it Harry Maguire, holding on to Victor Gyökeres during a corner kick. Now, like I said, all you need is to look into your objectivity and disabuse of yourself of any bias that you may have against any team. Then you'll be able to see things perhaps my way. And I do not mean that you must see them my way, or at least you should be able to see them in a different way. Okay, moving on. Okay. You came back to say Arsenal did nothing in that match. Manchester United was way better. Arsenal won it as usual, defending, and then one goal by Carafiori. That's true. First of all, on a day that your opponent is being better than you, the best thing you can do for yourself is stay in the game. Go back to Manchester United last season when they beat up against Manchester City by 2-1. Goals from, I think, Bruno, was it Harry Maguire? And then Amadou Diallo, who scored the winning goal. Man City were leading that game by 0-0. Man United were not having a good day in office, but they played well enough to stay in the game. And very late in the game, they scored and eventually won the game. Guys, do not look at football like it's a basketball game where you're going to have, high scores on both sides. And like I've said, it is okay for a team to play a game and their opponent on the day is better than them on that given day. At the end of the day, then the final result is going to decide the game. That he who scores at the end of the game will be qualified as winner, regardless of how well you played. Another quick example. Go back to Manchester City's 1-1 draw against West Ham United. Man City were the better team. They created all sorts of chances, but they could only score one chance. And that's why it ended in a draw. It's not because the game was boring. It's not because Man City did not play well. They did not play well enough to score more than one goal that would win them the game. It's that simple. It's that simple. Go back to the game between Sunderland against Port Vale in the FA Cup at the 50th round. Sunderland were miles dominant in that game, but it was Port Vale eventually that crossed the ball over the line and they won the game and knocked out Sunderland. It's the nature of football. You can go back to yesterday's game between Lazio and AC Milan and go watch the highlights and see how well AC Milan played. But they did not win the game. They lost. Why? Because they did not score. Regardless of your view about Lazio, it's simple. They scored. AC Milan played good football, but they did not score. So they did not win. So the same thing happened between Arsenal and Man United. Man United played good football. Arsenal were not at it on the day, but they played well enough to stay in the game. And eventually, when they scored, they defended that lead and won the game of football. That's why it read 3 points for Arsenal and 0 for Man United. That's the context of it. Do you mean to say that all season, Arsenal have played the same way they played away to Manchester United? Is that what you're trying to say? Again, unless you're wearing different lenses, then I cannot convince you otherwise. I cannot convince you otherwise. And you see, the bit about this bit, or the unfortunate bit about it, depending on which way you look at it, is that the certain media narratives have led people to believe certain things that are not even of fact. So I'll die on that hill. I'll die on that hill. Okay. Let's go on. Legit, all you subscribers are against this, bro. Legit, all your subscribers. No, Pedri. Let's not exaggerate this. There are more than presently there are more than 4,000 subscribers in the channel, and unfortunately, we've not had the chance to have all of them here. And for me, I would have loved to have all of them here, and we do exchange these thoughts. And it's okay. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. Please, it is okay to have a difference of opinion. It is okay I'm not trying to convince you to believe in my opinion. All I'm trying to convince you is to be objective enough to see things within the context in which they are. It's that simple, but it's okay for us to have different opinions. We should all unsubscribe now. It is your prerogative, Pedri, if you see fit, if that's how you see it. If our differences in opinion are what lead you to unsubscribe, it is okay. It is well with me. I will not take peace about that. I'll not take peace about that. You say a one-off game where your team is bad and you win is fine. Realists defending for 90 minutes. Realists are defending for 90 minutes. However, if you do this for 90 minutes and win the league every single match, this is not right, bro. Pedri. Now, based on that very last comment, before this one, when you say read the comment above, yes. Read the comment above that we should unsubscribe. You say Arsenal XG from open play is 27.57. Liverpool last year at this point had 56.87 XG. This is data you wanted to hear. Ha 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 ha. Here it is. Liverpool was a real winner. Again, who said Liverpool was not a winner? Unfortunately, XG has just come a couple of, in these 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 3. I cited for you the example of Manchester United. Go back to 2008, 2009. Also give me their XG, since we are talking about XG now. Go back to that and give me their XG. Let it not be a one-sided sort of a conversation, Even a very defensive Chelsea side that only conceded 15 goals in the season, that campaign scored 72 goals, at least 4 more than the Man United 2008. And again, you see the beauty about this. When Chelsea were doing that back in 2005 and subsequently 2006, the narrative or the story was they're just so good at defending. And indeed, they were good at it. They also had a very good goalkeeper in Peter Cech. We all know what he did in the Premier League. I think he has one of the highest number of clean sheets in his Premier League career. And then the subsequent season, Chelsea still scored 72 goals. Only that they conceded 7 goals more compared to the previous season. But even with 22 goals conceded, that's still stellar defending. So the narrative then was that Chelsea was good defensively. Now that Arsenal are doing it, they are too conservative, they are playing boring football. You see how, let me give you this example. Raheem Sterling spent some money and I think bought his mother a house. And the media wrote that he was splashing the cash, more as if to say wasting money. When Phil Foden did something similar, it was a smart decision. That's media bias on the reporting. Not so many years ago, ESPN did a story praising how Jurgen Klopp had redefined the importance of set pieces in the game. And particularly, and I stand to be corrected, but I think it was the 2018-2019 season. That is the season when they lost the Premier League title to Manchester City by a point, finishing with 97 points, whereas Man City had won it with 98 points. That Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp had redefined the importance of set pieces in the game. Present day, the same media wants to tell us that Arsenal have ruined the game by being good at set pieces. Now, if you do not find anything wrong in those two narratives, then there's not a better way I can explain it to you, Pedri. Unfortunately, there's just not a better way. Then I wanted to go back to you to go back to that XG. You see the thing about XG. I'm not too sold about the XG. I remember in the first part of the season, Manchester United had a better XG than any other Premier League team, and still they were not banging in the goals. So eventually that meant they were not winning games. You can have an XG of 98%, but if you're not scoring, then it's not going to amount to anything. That means you're closer to scoring, but you're not scoring. It's the story of Burnley. Go back to Burnley 2023-2024 under Vincent Kompany. They were playing very good football, but their problems were they were not scoring enough. They were conceding a lot. They ended up being relegated. The Burnley of Scott Parker is not much different. So that's the context. So the context of XG is that you can have a high XG, but if you're not scoring the goals to win you games of football, then it doesn't amount to nothing. Liverpool used that good XG that you've cited to bang in the goals, and they came out champions. That's the honest bit of it. And they deserve to be champions. And I remember I said this, and I'll say it again, that it felt like an odd season, last season. Why? Simply of the fact that when I look back in the years gone by, in the last 5 years, that the points at 84 points, the points with which Liverpool finished at, in those seasons gone by, that was not enough to win you the Premier League title. But if I say that without giving you the context of the season within which Liverpool won it, then I'm misleading people in the conversation. That's the case it would be. Those 84 points, the 2 seasons prior to that, would not have qualified for Liverpool to even finish second. And I remember I was making that point when I was talking about luck. Being in the right moment. And even Mikel Arteta said something similar. With 84 points, Liverpool won the Premier League title. When on previous occasions, the same Liverpool side lost the title with 97 points, with 92 points. So, should we go back and say that those two Liverpool sides were not good enough just because this one won it with 84 points? No, we cannot say that. That's the context. That on the other 2 occasions, they lost it because Man City eventually were slightly better. This season round, even though the fact is that the 84 points felt few, that was still miles better than everybody else because they finished 10 points behind the second place team. It's just a fact. So then let me go back to that particular comment where you say it's okay for a team to win playing a bad game of football for a one-off. And I completely agree with you with that one. That, for example, let's say, because what example can I use? For example, Liverpool last season lost only 4 games. Among those losses was to Nottingham Forest, to Fulham, I think, because they lost to Fulham 3-2. They also lost to Chelsea. I don't remember who exactly they lost to. And they had 9 draws and 25 wins. Arsenal had 14 draws. They had also 4 losses that season. So you can see, you can sort of see where the difference was. They both lost the same number of games. But also, for purposes of context, Manchester City lost 9 games last season. But still, they finished with only 3 points behind Arsenal. Why? Because they drew 6 games fewer than Arsenal. That is context. So, I understand a team, let's say Bayern Munich, because I think Bayern Munich has been one of the scintillating teams in football this season, at least by measure of their standards in the German Bundesliga, and by extension in the UEFA Champions League, where during the league phase, they lost only one game. I understand when you've been as good as Bayern Munich have been good this season, and then you have a bad day in office and still win by a goal to nil. Now, in that very respect, Pedri, do you, in your all honesty of opinions, say that Arsenal have played throughout the entire season all bad games and have won playing bad? If that's your honest opinion about it, that's where we are leaving the debate at. As simple as that. If it is your honest opinion, as you suggest to say, because here you say that, however, if you do this for 90 minutes and win the league every single match, this is not the right pro. Because you say every single match. If it is your honest opinion that that's how Arsenal played, the 31 Premier League games they've played thus far to get to where they are, if it is your honest opinion that in 31 games, for which they've lost 3 of, by the way, and they have about, I think, 7 draws or thereabout, and then they've won the others. If it is your honest opinion that in all the 31 Premier League games they have played thus far, they've been that bad, but still found a way to win majority of those games, please let me know down in the comment section if you stand by that comment that you made earlier on. Okay, you say, I feel bad now. It was a prank. I am joking, but I dislike their way, but not this much, Lolo. It was all a prank. I wanted to see how much passion you have. If it is indeed a prank, then you got perhaps you made the debate more educative or argumentative, and perhaps went on for as long as it did. But for me, the point I wanted to drive home, and it wasn't even for argument's sake, was that when people that have played the game of football, between you, Pedri and I, will know that if, let's say, Messi is speaking about the game of football, if Xavi is speaking about the game of football, if Iniesta is speaking about this beautiful game of football, if Thierry Henry is speaking about it, we want to listen to them because they speak from a point of experience at the highest of competitive levels, that they have experienced the game in dressing rooms that have won titles and in dressing rooms that have lost titles, in whichever way they may have lost them. But when people like Mikel Obi come out and they sit within the same space, like all those other legends of the game, and then paint the game in such bad shade, then how do we then hold them with the same high regard? And whereas I understand it is supposed to be a difference of opinion, but there is such an opinion so bad that it demystifies logic. For me, it's okay to have a difference of opinion, but if your difference in opinion is not backed by facts or logic, then I'm sorry. I'm going to call it for what it is. And that's why I started by saying that people like Mikel Obi are the kinds of persons that make arguments and make black people look stupid. And yet they are not stupid. They are very intelligent people. Bruhi says, hello, man. Hello to you too. So, and that's why I said he's either stupid or delusional, or he's just chasing clout for his podcast. If it is for clout for his podcast, he has us talking. If it is delusional, unfortunate, it's very unfortunate. If it is him being stupid, but when you listen to his tone, for me, in part or in large context, it came with a lot of bias that he has about Arsenal as a team than the love he has for the game. That's why for him, it felt so bitter. Are you talking about when Obi called Arsenal title illegal? Yes, something like that. He said he will not acknowledge them as title winners if they go on to win the Premier League title. He says they will have done it by cheating. Oh my, oh my. Time is a very interesting phenomenon. That's why I was drawing people back to the examples of the team that he played in. When you go back to the Chelsea that won the Premier League title, all those years ago. And, and then when it comes to changing football, when you go back to the Chelsea side that won the Premier League title in 2015, under the charges of Jose Mario Felix Mourinho on his second spell with Chelsea, you'll find for the first time, I think I seem to remember a Chelsea side that conceded as many as 32 goals that campaign. And even with those 32 goals, they were still the best defense there was in the league. But I remember watching, I think it was their game against Everton. They either won it by 6-3 or 5-3, thereabout. Samuel Eto'o's among the goal scorers. And I watched that game and I said to myself, this is not Jose Mourinho football. Why? Because we are used to a Jose Mourinho team that is very conservative, that if you're going to score against them, you'll be very, very lucky to score more than 2 on any given day. So that's the context. Bruhi says, haha, yeah, set pieces aren't cheating. They are part of the game. You can hate it, but calling it illegal is crazy. Exactly. You couldn't have put it any better. They are part of the game. Whether you like them or you don't like them, whether you appreciate them or you don't, they are part of the game. It's the same way, for example, one of the things I do not appreciate in the game is throw-ins, and the reason for me I do not appreciate throw-ins is because they say it's football, and when you touch the ball with your hand, it's a foul. But then we are allowed people to use their hands to throw the ball back on the pitch and play on. So many years ago, Arsene Wenger was of the view that instead of having a throw-in, we should have a kick-in. And it made sense in that kind of context, that let's only have the goalkeeper, the only player being allowed on the pitch to use their arms. So, but yeah, set pieces are part of the game. In any case, today, majority of teams have set piece coaches. Keith Andrews was a set piece coach before being elevated to head coach. Nicolas Jova had his stint with Manchester City as a set piece coach, and they improved on how they defended set pieces and how they scored from set pieces. All these other teams, Liverpool, I do not know if it is still the same case, had a throw-in coach, and the throw-in is a set piece. So that tells you the importance of set pieces, really, in the modern day game. And whereas this is largely, or the obsession, or whatever or the emphasis. For me, I do not want to call it an obsession. I want to call it an emphasis on set pieces, whereas it is started with the Premier League, or predominantly with the Premier League. I think we're going to see more and more of it. Because why? Look at modern day football statistics. Today, particularly in the Premier League, you'll find among the top 10 passers of the ball are defenders. Why? Because the ball is predominantly being played from the back. That's why you have your center backs leading in passes completed or in touches of the ball, more than midfielders, more than you'd have for forward players. It's a shift in the game. And whether we like it or not, it is what it is, unfortunately. Bruhi says, what do you think about Max Dorman? Max Dorman, I think, is a very, very exciting young player. The one thing I said I love about young players is that they play without any reservation. They've not had so many contact injuries. They do not. When they hear about some of these football stars and they come to play against them, as much as they admire them or appreciate them, they want to show that I may be young, but I can put you to the challenge. And so they play with a lot of freedom. They play with a lot of excitement. They want to enjoy themselves. And I do not want to draw comparisons, but he is one of the most exciting young talents that I have seen in recent times. However, for me personally, I do not want to get so carried away because I've seen a lot of young talents emerge and then for some reason their careers did not materialize. And I can go on to cite examples. Some that came out and played at the top level, others that did not even get the chance. For example, Arsenal used to have a kid called Gideon Zalarim. We never got to see him. Ibrahim Aferai at Barcelona, Bojan Kakic, the young versions of them never materialized into the senior careers to be as scintillating as they look to be. We see Lamine Yamal today. We like him. You see Desli Doué, very exciting young player. Bradley Bacola. And I remember somebody asked me in one of our broadcasts a few years ago, sorry, not a few years ago, a few months ago, that what will it take for Lamine Yamal to stay at the top level, playing that well and being consistent to go on for many years? And I remember some of the things I highlighted on was, one, his discipline. As a person, he needs to stay sort of calm. He needs to stay humble in a way. And I remember citing the example of Lionel Messi. Two, he needs luck. He needs to be very, very lucky when it comes to injuries, because injuries can ruin very good players. When you look at players like Vasilik Abdiabe, players like Jack Wilshere, players like Nicole Zaniolo, players like Manuel Pellegrini, I do not think they've lived to the expectation, largely due to injuries. Look at Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich. Look at how Jamal Musiala's progress has been hampered by injuries over the last 2 years. And yet, for me, I regard Jamal Musiala quite really highly, in the same ranks of Lamine Yamal, the same ranks with the Michael Olises of this world, you know. So, discipline, luck with injuries are main key factors, and then how the media relates with you, because that's very key. One of my disappointments with the English media is that they can balloon a player and then deflate him. When it comes to building profiles of players in terms of branding, the English media is so good at it. There's a discussion I was involved in on a different forum. It was about football. And somebody cited the example of David Beckham. And they said, if you get a magnifying glass and put it on David Beckham's career, I do not think he would be anywhere within the top 10 of the most talented players, football players that you may have watched in your history of watching the game. But his name was so big that even to this day, it is still that big and has an impact on the game. You know, that it is still held in high regard. Why? The English media built that brand of David Beckham. But talent-wise, he's not the most exceptional of talents that you're going to see there. In fact, I could make the case that if we go back in history, whether in his, if we go back in the history of the game, and we can predate it to a certain period of time, and let's say between 1990 until maybe 2007, and you list the top 20 most talented players or gifted players of that time, I wouldn't be surprised if he weren't to be accommodated in that top 20. But perhaps that's a wider discussion. But so, for me, Max Doman is a very exciting talent. I want Mikel Arteta to trust him more. Why? Because I saw Xavi bring Lamine Yamal to the scene, and he was trusting him more. He doesn't necessarily have to start games, but he can definitely be bringing him on. And the more you play, the more confidence you gain, the more experience you get. Players become better by playing more minutes, oftentimes, than not. So that's the kind of direction that I want Arsenal to look at him. I see him as not different from the likes of Miles Lewis-Kelly, from the likes of Ethan Nwaneri. Of course, different, same profile in terms of being academic graduates, being sort of around the same age bracket. The other ones are 18, he's 16, and things like that. So he just has to put his head down, remain the normal kid. You all remember when we were raving about Marcus Rashford, when Louis van Gaal pulled him out of the Man United academy and he was blowing away teams. He scored a brace against Midtjylland, came and scored a brace against Arsenal, and there was no looking back. But unfortunately for Marcus Rashford, his career came to a certain point and it suffered a stagnation, So, in that sort of context. Then you say, I think Arsenal kind of need someone who loves dribbling and gliding past people, and Dorman does that. That is true. But also, I will say this, that the modern day game does not have a lot of players or a lot of kids. Actually, let me say a lot of players that are doing that. Just go look around and see how many players have that skill set of dribbling past players. And oftentimes, whenever you see it, you're going to see it being cited in line with a young player, usually a young player below the age of 23. That's why you have Ryan Cherki. We were raving about him at Lyon last season, and he's come to Man City. We were raving about Lamine Yamal, raving about Willian Esteban of Chelsea, and now you have Max Dorman. Of course, you have a couple of others out there. But go through players that are at least the age of 25 and above. How many players are doing what you're saying, gliding past players, dribbling with that bit of freedom, the way Lionel Messi was doing it, the way Alexander Leb used to do it, the way Sant Cazorla used to do it, the way Eden Hazard used to do it, that kind of thing, Even Yannick Bolasie, a prime Yannick Bolasie, was good at dribbling, and for me, dribbling is part of the entertainment of football. In fact, dribbling, for me, is the hallmark of entertaining football, not this tic-tac kind of football. For me, it was Ronaldinho Gaucho dribbling past people, Lionel Messi, Arjen Robben, those kinds of players, his Leite Kaka, that kind of football, Ronaldo Nazario de Lima, those kinds of things. For me, that's the hallmark of entertaining football. And unfortunately, today, we have very few players that are capable of that. Amadou Diallo will do it today, tomorrow he won't do it. So he sort of picks and chooses when he does it. But I want to see those kinds of players that literally dart past players, drop a shoulder, go past, opponents like they are not even there. And that kind of thing. That's the entertaining football that we all love to watch. You got to say Rio and Max Dorman both got man of the match in the game week. I really like that. I like when young players get chances and take it all. Yeah, Rio Ngomoha was man of the match the other weekend. Was it the other weekend? What was the game? I'm trying to remember. I think it was Liverpool's FA Cup game. No, was it the win against win against Wolverhampton Wanderers 3-1 in the FA Cup game was man of the match. And players like Riongo Moha, when you look at him bring the ball to the defenders, he's fearless. He's fearless because he's not afraid that I'm going to be hard tackled by this guy. He's not thinking about it that way. He's not playing with caution, So he's coming at you with all that he's got. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. Unfortunately, guys, we've not had the chance to discuss the other part of the topic of discussion this morning about Michael Carrick. I will reserve that debate for another time. Perhaps I'll look to do an exclusive video and put it up on the channel in regards to my whole views about, Michael Carrick and whether he should be given the job. I will have time to talk about that. Bruhi, you say, yes, I agree. My favorite type of players are the ones that at least try to dribble past opponents. Yamal, Olise, Chucky, even Olmo to the extent. Yeah, Jamal Musiala, those kinds of players. They're the ones that make football entertaining. Then Raymond says hi, Chelsea versus Newcastle United. My man of the match is Anthony Gordon of Newcastle United. Give credit for Ed Howe for Newcastle United. I'm happy for Newcastle United. I am a happy Newcastle United fan from Ray. Thank you so much, Ray Kangumba, there for that submission. And yeah, Newcastle had a good game. Chelsea were not clinical with some of their chances. Aaron Ramsdale had a good game. Robert Sanchez, not too bad, but it was that one chance that gave away the game. And usually, like I keep saying, modern day games, or even football in general has always been a game of fine margins. You make a mistake, you're going to be punished for it, and the other team will end up winning. So all these games that we see with that one goal difference in terms of margin, or sometimes even more, it's mistakes that are punished. Go back to Tottenham Hotspur losing to Atletico de Madrid, go back to Chelsea losing to PSG, you'll find that mistakes were punished. And so was this time round. And yeah, Newcastle had a good game. Thank you so much for your submission. Bruhi, sorry, is it Bruhi or Bruhid? I think the name is Bruhid. Apologies if I was mispronouncing your name. Please forgive me. Bruhid K. Who? Who? Oh, yeah, I don't know why I did not take notice, but who has always been here with us for at least he's become a semi-regular in recent times. So guys, it's been 1 hour and 45 minutes. I did not anticipate the discussion will go on this long, but I do appreciate all the time that you've dedicated to be part of the discussion this beautiful morning. I want to say thank you so much, Raymond. Thank you so much, Brohit. Thank you so much, Pedri, for all your views, for helping widen and even lengthen the discussion. Thank you so much, Liam, and thank you so much, Mwavali Elwin. Thank you so much for having been part of today's discussion. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. or 9:30, and then on Saturdays at 10 a.m. We come to you live to discuss the latest from the world of football. And then every single night at 11 p.m. Besides Friday we come at around 9 p.m. To go through the action. Then there was somebody who calls himself What Makes It Work Explained. Thank you so much for having been part of today's discussion. So all of you guys that have been part of today's discussion, I appreciate you a great deal. Thank you so much. Who says, by the way, Dorman has played 43 minutes in the Premier League and has same goals as Mikel Obi, who has played. Very interesting fact. But anyways, for me, the point was all to say I did not take to heart with the kind of comments that came from Mikel Obi. And the reason as to why is because he was on TalkSport, and that's such a big platform that is listened to and followed by a lot of people that love football. And you remember when I said that the media shapes the narrative or people's perceptions about the game overall. And when you let such opinions slide unchallenged, you're going to have people biased about certain teams and things like that without the right kind of information. So, and people who criticize Arsenal for what it is are well within their right, and that's okay. But every time you do not add the right context to it, you're bound to mislead people in your debate, especially if you are as biased as Mikel Obi was in that particular interview. So thank you so much, guys, for having been part of this morning's discussion. Allow me to wrap it up here, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day, a blessed week. Let's do this again tonight, and perhaps maybe tonight we'll get to talk about Michael Carrick's topic as a whole, because I would unfortunately would not get the time to discuss it in this morning's broadcast. So stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.